tell you that he's an amazing columnist, an anchor, a co-host on radio, a world-renowned speaker, a panelist, a motivator. I could tell you that he's a transensual, and I did that intentionally, genius. He gave me different words, so I decided to flip them out a little bit. I could tell you he's an amazing author. I'm reading his book as we speak. But I decided, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to tell you about that, because that's really boring. True, but boring. What I actually really want to tell you is an aha moment I had when I just for the first time met our lunch speaker. I had this inspirational, incredible moment. This is a person I have been following my entire career for over 25 years. I've been in this business over 30. I'm sorry, Bob, but I discovered you 25 years ago when you were writing for Ad Age. And you always said it like it was. You were so direct and so honest and so forthright and so scary because you were so damn right. And I didn't want to believe it because it keeps you up at night when you can't solve the problems. And I flew here from Los Angeles today just to introduce you because I've really always wanted to meet you in person. So for all of you bloggers and people writing, don't twist this too much. My husband won't be happy, but I have been an admirer of yours for over 25 years. And there have been a few inspirations in my life that have given me these aha moments, because we talk about the world is changing. And that's not true. The world has changed. We have moved from a linear world to a world where consumers are multitasking and multi-screening on steroids. We have moved from a world where we could push content to a world where consumers pull content. As a matter of fact, we are living in a world of IWWI. I want what I want, when I want it, where I want it. Right? We're living in a world of Gen Z. We are living in a world of the connected generation. What are the implications of that? It's a little scary because it's very hard to measure for all of us people in media measurement and research measurement. What's the ROI on non-linear, non-sequential, cross-platform content, multi-screening stuff? Hard to answer that, right? Right. So I would like to introduce, there have been 2 books that I have read up until this one that have been helping me answer some questions. The first one I read was called Love Marks by Kevin Roberts. I was sitting on an airplane many years ago, and I read this book that talked about how you can't like something anymore. If brands don't get their consumers to love them, in this digital age, it's going to be very scary. Because when you love a brand, you will search them out, you will find them, you will forgive them if something bad happens, especially when consumers are curating their own content. And every page in this book, as simple as it was visually arresting. I was excited and delighted on every single page. And that's when I started understanding that brands need to develop a love relationship. The second book I loved was called The Open Brand by a woman called Kelly Mooney, who talked about how brands today need to be transparent and open and honest and sharing, because if they don't, consumers will communicate what they want about that brand, and of course I'll communicate to my 1,000 best friends who will communicate to their 1,000 best friends, and regardless of false or fiction, true or false, it will become the new reality for that brand. And then I read this book called You Can't Buy Me Like. And it is so true. We are in an era, a relationship era, which is what Bob talks about all the time. You gotta develop that relationship because likes don't buy you transaction. You gotta create that relationship where you're engaging. We're moving from awareness to engagement to amplification to ultimately impact. What's the impact? And when you have a relationship with a consumer that loves you and you're open and you're transparent, you will find yourself becoming very successful. So with the greatest admiration to a man that has truly inspired me for so many years, I would like to welcome Bob Garfield.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Talk about it. Be careful.
Okay, I can live with that. You're a mess, Shelley. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. I am a transensual, and it's time for the whole world to know it. It is a great pleasure to be here in the Glaciers of Krypton room at the Marriott Marquis. Apologize for being a little late to the podium. I was in the elevator lobby trying to figure out how they worked. Look, I got to tell you something. Things have changed. Things have changed on stages like this. For so long, we as audience members would have to sit there while some self-indulgent jerk would just show one PowerPoint slide after another and read from a prepared script. But now, and I think largely thanks to TED and events like it, now we have conversations with audiences. We don't lecture, we don't hector, we share. I mean, most people do, but fuck that shit. I'm reading from a script and showing you slides. Forgive me for this, but I begin by asking you to entertain a kind of uncomfortable idea, namely that you've spent the last day and a half and every other day focusing on the wrong thing, advertising measurement. That is so 2012. In 2013, marketers trying to flog goods and services by blanketing the world with advertising, trying to persuade or entertain or flatter consumers into submission are doing things all wrong because the world, as Shelley said, has changed a lot. The old ways belong to a faraway time like the Yellow Pages or no matter how important or immutable they once may have seemed, some things just go away. And one of them, as you all well know, is media and marketing mass. Whereas the Industrial Revolution changed the world by creating economies of scale, the digital revolution has decimated scale. Newspaper and magazine circulation are in free fall, and there is nobody in this room who can't cite chapter and verse on the fragmentation of TV and the incredible shrinking network prime time. The defining element of 300 years of mass marketing was reach, which is now ever more out of reach. But who knows that more than y'all? Sadly, and despite of the obviousness of the obvious, whole industries and many of you cling to the remnants of the status quo even as your grip gets weaker and weaker, because the digital revolution and societal shifts have brought us to a new period. What has brought us here? The disintegration of mass is only one factor. 4 major forces of society, technology, and the economy have converged to alter forever the very nature of marketing. Even as it was enabling infinite quantities of content, the internet has torn down the ramparts, separating the corridors of business power from the teeming hordes. Once corporations and brands could operate behind nearly impregnable fortifications. Now there is hardly an event that takes place, especially an ugly one, that doesn't become exposed to one and all immediately and in perpetuity. There was a time not long ago when Apple could run sweatshops, and Chick-fil-A could donate to bigots, and Progressive Insurance could screw policyholders entirely under the radar. No more. Consider the 2011 derailment of China's new magnetic levitation train, killing 38 people and injuring hundreds of others. The government ordered the Chinese media not to cover the accident, and the media, for the most part, obliged. But cell phone pictures from the scene spread in social media and soon revealed that the authorities had brought in earth-moving equipment to literally bury the evidence. Oh yeah, I'll just PowerPoint, four forces, and bury the evidence. If there is nowhere to hide in a police state, it is folly to think that you can be opaque here, which gets to that force number 3 from the last slide, the rise in social connectivity. Nowadays, a brand's news, good or bad, becomes conversational currency worldwide. For instance, most likely all of you have seen in its entirety this.
Cause United breaks guitars.
If there's someone in the audience from United Airlines, I so apologize. However, it could have been so much worse. That is just an excerpt of Dave Carroll's video that was viewed north of 10 million times on YouTube alone, because everyone knew it was true. The corollary to that is, everybody knows that the United advertising campaign is a lovely, uplifting, 25-year-old, bald-faced lie. Not that it's bad advertising if your goal is to shape image. I think you could scarcely choose better than Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue. It is lovely, it's majestic, it's uplifting, and just simply on every creative level magnificent, yet it still cannot hypnotize you into forgetting the surly, mistreated employees, the reduced services, the pay-as-you-go food, the fees for bags, the fees for ticket changes, the fees for child escorts, the lost luggage, the broken guitars, total ineptitude, which is why everybody hates United Airlines. A quarter of a century of supposed perception shaping at a cost of billions of dollars has earned United Airlines zilch. I just want to show you a much more recent example. Abercrombie has long paraded semi-nude fashion models to project an air of not just casual sexuality, but aspirational coolness. It's a store built to attract the popular kids and those who want to be popular. Store employees are always slim and attractive. Plus-size girls may as well shop elsewhere because there are no sizes on Abercrombie racks that will fit them. The chain's CEO has actually boasted that he doesn't want his brand damaged by association with the kids who sit at the losers table at the school cafeteria. Now, I'm delighted to report that Mike Jeffrey's repulsive, bullying brand strategy has at long last triggered an online backlash. This is the beginning of a YouTube video by a Los Angeles filmmaker named Greg Carber.
Abercrombie & Fitch is a terrible company. Their CEO insists on only hiring attractive people, which is ironic because he looks like this. In addition, he has made a point of refusing to sell extra large or extra large clothing to women because he doesn't want larger women wearing his clothes. Abercrombie & Fitch CEO and old Biff lookalike explains this policy by saying, "In every school there are the cool and popular kids, and then there are the not so cool kids. We go after the cool kids. A lot of people don't belong, and they can't belong. Are we exclusionary? Absolutely."
The video actually gets better. Carber goes on, he goes around to thrift shops in LA, and he starts buying up used Abercrombie items, and he distributes them to homeless people on Skid Row, commencing a movement called Fitch the Homeless. What a better way than this episode to demonstrate that in the relationship era, you do not get to dictate your own image. The public forms that all by themselves. And your advertising just isn't much of an influence. What is influential in 2013 is your actual conduct, your values, your inner you. And that's that fourth force which you briefly saw. The public suddenly has taken a deep interest in the inner you. According to the Edelman Trust Barometer, which is a longitudinal attitudinal survey, in 2006, in answering what was the standard of trust between a consumer and a brand, the top response was, quality products and services. By 2010, mere quality had dropped to number 3. The number 1 response, cited by 83% of respondents, was transparent and honest business practices. Sure, you have to have the goods, but increasingly, part of the goods includes integrity, trustworthiness, shared values, and of all crazy things, a sense of brand purpose. That truth was strikingly documented in the 2007 book, Firms of Endearment. The authors selected 30 companies that they deemed to be driven by purpose as opposed to slavish devotion to quarterly earnings. Companies which, less paradoxically than would meet the eye, in the author's judgment, built shareholder value by not obsessing on the shareholders. Among them, Honda, Trader Joe's, the Container Store, Southwest Airline, eBay, and more. And lo and behold, these firms of endearment outperform the rest of the corporate universe. I mean, wildly outperform it. On average, between 1996 and 2011, during which span the benchmark S&P average was up 157%, firms of endearment companies up close to 1,700%. Why? Because in a connected world, purpose and trust feed a virtuous circle of affinity, enthusiasm, recommendation, and even activism. Brands that are admired for the totality of their activity simply perform better in the marketplace than brands that simply provide quality goods and services. At Me+U, the Dallas digital agency headed by my co-author, Doug Levy, this concept was documented quite vividly by a series of what they call brand sustainability maps. Get ready, folks. You know what's coming up? A 2x2 grid. Charting customer trust as the y-axis and transactions as the x creates 4 quadrants. The lower left limited quadrant is the province of losers. It's that table in the cafeteria, only it's not the fat girls, it's the brands that have no affection. You know, I'm pointing to the giant screen that hasn't been here for any of the 11 minutes that I've been on the podium. Yeah, okay, so they are struggling brands with flat or declining sales and commanded little respect of the customer. To its right is the reluctant quadrant, brands that command little respect and generate little emotion, but whose price or competitive advantage of some kind trumps any consumer misgivings. You know, that's like Walmart. You see what I'm saying? The upper left quadrant, emotional, is the home. I've done it again. The upper, I'm not pointing anymore. I'll leave that to Carol Merrill and Vanna White. The upper left quadrant is emotional, the home of brands that maintain respect in spite of quality issues or limited distribution or some competitive disadvantage. And then finally, in the upper right-hand corner, there is Valhalla, the quadrant called sustainable. Ordinarily at this stage, I show you the same grid with brands plotted in, but that would embarrass some of you, and I can't have that. Anyway, I think if you represent a brand, you know intuitively exactly where your brand plots out. I will say this, you see over there the limited quadrant, right? Okay, over there is where your cell phone carrier is located. So anyway, instead of showing you where the brands are plotted, let's try an experiment. If you've got devices, Google, please, the search term, I love Zappos. I did it, and I got almost 2 million unprompted expressions of devotion. Now, anyone want to hazard a guess as to how many hits you get if you Google, I love Dow Chemical Company? Anyone want to take a stab at that? 0? No, not 0, for crying out loud. I mean, this is a Fortune 50 company that does business in 212 countries of the world. It's not 0. Out of 7 billion human beings, 3 lonely souls declare their affection for the folks who brought you napalm and the clingiest saran wrap ever. Now, just to put that into context, were you to type in I love Satan, or by my math, about 98,000 times more beloved than the Dow Chemical Company, despite the multi-tens of millions of dollar human element advertising campaign and its multi-tens of million dollar secondary campaign called solutionism. Because, once again, the public has many more sources than your self-serving advertising to make a judgment. And I don't mean just customers and prospects. There are many other stakeholders to consider: employees, neighbors, suppliers, governments, shareholders, and the earth itself. It is the totality of those relationships that projects your corporate self. Nestle's Pete Blackshaw famously wrote that customer service is the new media department. But even Pete didn't fully understand the new dynamics. In a socially mediated world, wherein your every action or inaction is Googleable in perpetuity, this is an immutable fact of the relationship era that some companies, like United Airlines, continue to learn the hard way, while others simply knew it in their bones from the moment of creation. Our book is filled with cringe-worthy examples of companies with big ad budgets and wonderful slogans being sentenced to hard time by the court of public opinion because they didn't grasp this. Bank of America, Texaco, the once venerated Johnson & Johnson, and even the Susan G. Komen race for the cure. Yet others enjoy perennial growth and prosperity by simply being themselves. Zappos does it through astonishing customer service. assisted by employees hired for their dedication, encouraged to cultivate their own personalities on the phone. Their manual is not a script or a flow chart, but a list of 10 core values focusing on service, fun, open-mindedness, personal growth, honesty, humility, and passion. By no means does a brand purpose have to be unique or a statement of positioning, but in Zappos' case, they actually turn out to be one and the same. Its slogan is delivering happiness. And here's another statement of purpose you may or may not recognize. You know, it could be a revolutionary. It could be, you know, it could be a garden variety politician, Anthony Weiner or whatever. It could be an NGO. It could be freaking Easy Pass. Again, a purpose needn't be unique or differentiating. It need only be overarching and true. This one, penned by Ingvar Kamprad about 60 years ago, to this day, I believe perfectly describes this company. And every brand should distill precisely such a purpose, informing every single thing it does in the world with every single stakeholder. And by the way, when the alarm goes off at 6 o'clock in the morning, which sentiment is more motivating to drag your sorry ass out of bed? But, you know, I kind of know what you might be thinking. Yeah, Zappos, it's for the shoe obsessed, and IKEA, a world of lifestyle possibilities. I grant you that those are inherently emotional bases for forging a purpose and for building a relationship. But what about, say, CPG? Try plumbing the depths of a deodorant, right? Try looking for inspiration in perspiration. It can be done. In 2008, despite popular line extensions that had caused some transitory growth and improved overall margins, the 50-year-old secret brand was more or less flatline. And this is where my co-author's agency, Me Plus You, got involved. They were aware of an internal exercise at Procter that had forced every brand to develop a brand purpose. Locked people in a room, locked the team in the room, and they weren't allowed out basically until they had divined a brand purpose. Secret had one. It looked like this. I know PowerPoint protocol requires for me to read this aloud as you're reading it to yourself, but I'm going to let you handle this. You know, it's nice. It's a little wordy, but it wasn't really ever intended for human eyes. It's nice. Helping encourage female fearlessness. It's actually more than nice. But like most purpose documents at P&G, it just sat there in a folder somewhere until Me Plus You called Procter's attention to, of all things, the deplorable status of women's ski jumping in the Winter Olympics. That is to say, there was none. For some reason, the IOC, in its infinite wisdom, believed women to be unworthy of jumping off of mountains. The agency knew of fledgling efforts to sanction women's ski jumping as an Olympic event and suggested to Procter & Gamble that it was a perfect overlap with Secret's purpose of encouraging female fearlessness. And thus was born Let Her Jump. With a negligible advertising buy for online to push people to the Facebook page, the movement consisted of this and a video and a petition. And that's how the effort was launched. Over the next 6 months, 3 things happened. First, more than 700,000 people viewed the video. Secondly, sales of Secret spiked like crazy. The clinical sports SKU, very expensive product, was up 85% during the Vancouver Olympics, on which Procter did not advertise Secret. And the entire clinical line saw growth in the saw growth in the teens. Last fiscal year, whatever, 3 years removed from the Vancouver Olympics, the clinical family was still growing more than 20% in sales. Oh, and that third thing, 6 months into the effort, the International Olympic Committee decided to include ski jumping for women in the upcoming 2014 Games. It wasn't a campaign. It was a movement. And it wasn't directed at an audience. It was shared with a community. If the relationship era in general is about anything, and social media in particular, it is sharing. Sharing. Ladies and gentlemen, please say, "Oh." Absolutely right. Look, they're sharing. Isn't that the cutest thing? And isn't it exactly the kind of image that people, forward to one another left and right? Well, that reminds me of something. This adorable video has been viewed more than 1 million times.
Oren, you're a mess. Actually, you look pretty clean in comparison. Oscar, you're so bad at eating.
Oscar, you're so bad at eating, he says. Those boys happen to be my grandchildren. And the dad squeaking in the background is my son-in-law. And his sister happens to be in the video seeding business. And when she saw a 5-minute version of this video, she wondered what would happen if she trimmed out the funniest part, the reveal, where Oscar is sitting there as phlegmatic as Winston Churchill after a pie-eating contest, and sent it along to bloggers of various kinds. Well, they loved it, of course, and they posted it, and before long it showed up on Yahoo's main page and BuzzFeed and like a zillion other places, including the Ellen DeGeneres TV show. Not one penny changed hands. It was just shared with people likely to take interest. And that whole episode got me to thinking, what if a brand, instead of creating ads to espouse a positioning, simply cultivated its various constituencies by sharing relevant stuff just harvested like this off the internet? Would it perform better or worse in terms of sharing and views and other metrics of engagement? And so with a guy named Eduardo Tobon, who is now president of the Diners Club International, but at the time was president of the cards division at Sovereign Santander Bank, we devised the Tobon test, an experiment comparing the efficacy of advertising versus curated, non-branded content. The experiment pitted the bank's best ads, and they were good, they were funny, and they were pointed, against YouTube videos of, like, I don't know, US currency in stop action animation, and of course a cat playing with aluminum foil covered candy coins. And the third item was this. They were, by the way, posted with just a perimeter of red around them that said, "From your friends at Santander." That ad, or that video and two others, kicked the living shit out of the advertising. They weren't even in the same ballpark when the numbers came in. Why? Why did this get viewed and shared more? Because the chief marketing officer decided that it was the best expression of brand positioning? No, it wasn't that. Because the media agency bought the perfect schedule? Nope. Because a Cannes Lion-winning ad agency crafted this at great expense? No, it was successful because it was about shopping, it was cute, and it was simply appreciated by those the bank shared it with. Ladies and gentlemen, you can buy expensive advertising, but you can't buy love. You can't even buy like. but you can earn it. Now, before I wrap up, there are a couple of things I need to emphasize. I have lived on this earth long enough to know that some executives will sit through a presentation like this and leap immediately into action by calling the head of PR to come up with a good, purposey sounding slogan to slap on the webpage and the annual report. Ladies and gentlemen, take my word for this. You cannot fake authenticity. Hyping dubious humanity credentials is like lying to your psychoanalyst. It is a pointless exercise. For instance, you know who this belongs to? Yeah, that's Philip Morris. Here's another. Integrity, communication, respect, excellence. Respect, excellence. Any thoughts? Yeah, don't bother. It was Enron. In the internet age, there is no use trying to peddle that baloney to anybody because nobody believes you. Nobody believes your phony slogans or your meaningless corporate social responsibility claims or your market share boosters disguised as philanthropy. Giving money to sick kids for every diaper sold is not charity. It is sales promotion, and often repulsively exploitative, which critics now will nail you on in an online minute. So yeah, file that in a list of don'ts. For the do's of the relationship era, let me just recap. Stop shouting, because nobody is listening to you. They're listening to one another talk about you. Treat your customers, well, I'm not very good at pressing buttons firmly. There we go. Treat your customers well, but do exactly the same thing for employees, suppliers, and neighbors. Bedding plants are nice, but they have to be purchased and planted every year. So why not try a perennial? Take care of it, and it will flower beautifully year after year. That's a metaphor. Finally, I leave you with this. People often ask me to distill the entirety of a book into one idea. Now, I'm not really a big fan of reductiveness, but I have given this a lot of thought because the question keeps coming up. And so I've taken my own advice to distill the thing to its essence. So here goes. What it comes down to, ladies and gentlemen, in business and in life, just you've been a very gracious audience. Thank you very much. Thank you.